Hey, GovCon Giants family, your host Eric Coffie here today, bringing you another episode of the GovCon Giants podcast. Today's guest, Mr. Russell C Teter III. Actually, he served at the Chamber of Commerce and as a SBDC assistant, and then he moved on to the director and then the director of training. And so now he's got more than 14 years of experience helping nearly 13,000 entrepreneurs in their quest to pursue government contracts, including equity and debt financing. But the stuff that we talk about today, we actually spent almost 2.5 hours on a call. So I'm breaking this up into two parts. This is part one that you're listening to. I mean, I want everyone to tune in because really he covers the gamut of a lot of things that we talk about over our programs, over our videos, and he covers it here in this first section or segment, excuse me, that's going to be about 55 to 60 minutes long. So again, I didn't want it to be too long to string people out, but some of the things that we talk about today includes three core areas you need to focus on for your small business: developing a pipeline to 9x your revenues, 2 pitfalls for small businesses, following the spending, the money, knowing their problems and how to solve them, and much, much more. I mean, I'm telling you, I was impressed. In fact, he got me to say that entrepreneurs who've read this book should go back and read it each year, depending upon where you're at in your business. And so as a small business myself who's growing, I'm now having to revisit the E-Myth. So I want everyone really to engage with this. I mean, I've got 2 pages of notes here from the conversation that Russell and I had. I mean, it was incredible. He's written a couple of articles. The one that I really liked the most myself was based off of Martin Luther King Jr. And so it's called Look Beyond the Crisis, Reopening the Doors to Make Money and the New Economy. So again, I'm telling you, this guy is a powerhouse of information, having been a servant to all of us small businesses over the last almost nearly 2 decades. I'm telling you, when I say this guy brings the juice. So, hey, take out your notebooks, take out your pens, get ready to be engaged and to be wowed. And I promise you, you're going to learn something. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think about it. And again, we are running specials on our Academy 3.0 program. So jump over at GovCon.edu if you don't know anything about our courses, what we're offering, proposal writing services, or if it's been a while since you visited, we've got some new programs out there. So take a look, govcon.edu.com, for all of our offerings and programs. And if you got any questions, you can call us. 786-477-0477. Welcome to the stage, my man, Russell C. Teter III.
Looking at taking you from where your business is now to where you want to be. My name is Russell Teter, and I'm a certified business coach. I'm currently with the Small Business Development Center at University of Maryland. So any type of business question you have, I have over 14 years of experience coaching over 14 to 16,000 business owners in all different stages, mostly in the government contracting space, because Maryland is very key in government contracting. So any question that you have to take business owners from where they are now to where they want to be.
And that's a great space. I like the intro because so many people that are listening to us, they are in the government contracting space, and they want to know how do they take their business from mom and pop to small business. Maybe they're a solopreneur, and then they want to build that out to hire employees, and then from hiring employees as a small business, they want to grow that business into a mid-size business, and so forth. And then at some point, they may want to do an acquisition. And so there's a lot of tiers to that. So this is going to be a good conversation. I'm excited because first and foremost, you are my first ever person from SBDC. So that's exciting. And I have also personally used SBDC's resources before, right, even prior to COVID, because we are here in South Florida and we have hurricanes and disasters. And so most people probably listening to this, if you are not part of a natural disaster prior to COVID, maybe you're not familiar with some of the programs that the SBA has. And so you didn't have to necessarily take advantage of them. But my first encounter with the SBDC was after a hurricane. they were helping with providing some zero interest, 12-month deferred loans to small businesses that were impacted by the natural disaster. And so, Russell, I remember going into my SBDC's office in South Florida, and they had these loans that literally they lent me $50,000. I got approved in 2 weeks, and they took, I had all my paperwork. So again, I have my taxes, I have all my financials.
So one of the key things to separate is the difference between the small business development centers and the SBA. So the SBA is a federal agency and they provide direct loans. The Small Business Development Center, even though we get about a third of our funding from the SBA, we are not the SBA. We're not the federal government. All SBDCs now are based in a university or college. Mm-hmm. So we're to provide the technical assistance to help, say, get a loan. But we don't. We're not a federal agency. We don't lend money.
And I'm happy that he said that, because based on where I was headed, people would assume that the SBDC lent me the money, but they did not. They just told me about the program, and they're the ones that helped me put the packaging together. So they did not personally lend me the money. And this wasn't even an SBA loan. This was a program that was for the state of Florida that I'm sure that the federal government backed it, but it was a program within the state of Florida that I was introduced to by the SBDC. They helped me prepare the package to submit to the client, and then we got approved. So thank you, Russell, for clarifying that, because anyone listening might think that the SBDC lent me the money. They did not. But I didn't know about this program because I don't know about all the programs out there. So they're the ones that told me about the various programs that I could participate in.
So one of the key things that you said is you contacted the SBDC after a disaster.
Right.
And one of the things I want to emphasize is to build your network. And we're going to be talking about two different, but a mastermind group versus a virtual board. And from a mastermind group of people that you can interact with to get you from where you are now to where you want to be, is I encourage you to make 411 phone calls, not a 911 phone call. So call for information and not wait until there's a disaster, meaning a 911. Now I know that you were your case was a hurricane, but there's a lot of disasters,
right,
in business. And we'll be talking about the two pitfalls that business owners fall into and how to avoid, and some statistics on avoiding the two pitfalls that business owners fall into. But the key is to make 411 phone calls, call for information, not waiting until it's an emergency, because a lot of times it is way too late and far more expensive when you wait for an emergency versus calling for information.
And I really do like that, Russell. That's the reason why I created the podcast and my YouTube channel, is because so many of us don't even know these resources exist. And unfortunately, we're not sure where to turn even for that 411 phone call. So that's why we brought you on today, so that you can discuss all of the different reasons why someone should be reaching out to the SBDC. You can tell us the different reasons why you've seen the services that they provide, as well as what's the mission of the SBDC. And that way people would know to make that 411 phone call and not be in a position like myself, which was, okay, what do I do now? Disaster struck. Who do I turn to? We start scrambling, and luckily we found you, and it wasn't too late for us.
And the SBDC is just one small little piece of who should be on your mastermind group to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. The SBDC can be a provider of information and to bounce ideas off, but it's just one small little piece. The key is looking at where your business is now, where you want your business to be in 5 years, to write that down of the life that you want to create 5 years from now. And one of the key quotes that I love is from a guy named Charles Tremendous Jones that said, "You are the same today as you'll be in 5 years, except for the people you meet and the books you read." So it's, if you are hanging around the same people and reading the same thing, the life that you have, the business that you have now are going to be the same. The only way to get where you want to be in 5 years is to change who you're hanging out with and changing what you're reading. And it's to add as another author, and we're going to talk about the people you should meet and the books you should read to get you from where you are now to where you want to be.
And
it's a constant climbing to get to that ultimate where you want to be in business and the life you want 5 years from now.
I agree with that 1,000%. And typically what we do is at the end, we ask about books that, you recommend, but since you're on that topic, do you have anything in mind that you want to start spilling off? I mean, we can get this out.
So to me, the Bible on how to grow a small business is the book E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And it's a book that I encourage people to read every year because it speaks to where you are now in business. So it kind of has those layers. And so if you read it in your first year of business or before you start, it's going to speak to you at that point. If you're in business for 10 years and you're at $50 million in revenue, it's going to speak to you at that point. So it's a book I encourage people to read every day or every year. And one of the key principles from the book is how Michael Gerber explains the principle from the book with a dialogue with Sarah. And Sarah owned a pie baking business. And one of the key quotes from the book is, just because you understand the technical work of a business doesn't mean that you own or that you know how to own a business that does that technical work. Those are two different things. So in Sarah's case, just because she learned how to bake pies from her mother did not automatically mean that she knew how to own a bakery. Owning a bakery and baking are two totally different things. And that's the E in the E-Myth, the entrepreneurial myth. So you know the technical side, but you got to know how to own a business. And a lot of business owners don't know how to own a true business. And there's a big distinction between owning a real business and being self-employed. A lot of businesses out there are self-employed, and my focus under the SBDC is to help businesses create real businesses different from just self-employment. And there's nothing wrong with being self-employed, but how to build a real business.
I've read the E-Myth, but I have not went back and revisited the E-Myth.
Oh, there you go. So
I will say I too probably need to go back and revisit it based on what you just shared, because I would be interested to know how I interpret it now based on where I'm at and the life cycle of my business.
So it talks about systemizing your business and thinking about it like a franchise. And not that you are going to franchise your business, but if you build it like a franchise. So the book, another key quote from the book is, there's ultimately one reason to own a business of your own, and that is to sell it. And it talks about building to sell.
That's interesting, because I'm looking at other books on exit strategy. So maybe I already had it in the first book. I missed that section because I wasn't there in my journey.
So the exit strategy, in no shape or form am I saying that you must sell your business. But if you look at when somebody's looking at buying a business, there is two things that they're looking at. One is they want to make sure that the business is profitable. Nobody would buy a business that's not profitable. So it's creating a profitable business so that you have money. The second area is a person wants to make sure that the business is not dependent on the owner. So you could own a very profitable business, but if somebody's looking at buying a business, they want to make sure it's profitable, meaning has money. But the second question that people should ask is, how many hours do you need to work to create that money? And if the person says, oh, I got to work 7 days a week, the whole business is revolving around me, I can't take any time away from the business, no one's going to want to buy it.
Right.
So it's making sure that the business isn't dependent on you, that the business is sustainable without the owner, that the business owner has time. So there are two things that I focus on to build that real business, is that you have both time and money. The business is sustainable without the owner, and it is profitable. So profitability and sustainability, in other words, time and money. So those are the two things. Now, if somebody's looking at selling their business, that's the two things that a buyer's going to want, is to make sure that the business has time, meaning that it's not dependent on the owner, and that there's money. So if you build your business to sell it, what is the absolute worst thing that you have? The worst thing that you have is a profitable business that works without you, that you choose to keep. In no way, shape, or form am I saying you must sell your business. It is giving you, the owner, the freedom of choice. And isn't that the reason why most people start a business, is to create a freedom of choice? Yes. So if you build it to sell it, you have that freedom of choice. And we're going to be talking about how that applies to government contracting, how that applies to lending, and how those people want the same two things. You may call it time, I call it time and money for the owner, but they're making sure that the business is profitable and sustainable. Same thing, just different words. So a real business is one that is profitable, that works without the owner, that you can ultimately sell it. 3 things to create a profitable business. And there's 2 pitfalls that business owners fall into in getting to that point.
Okay, and they are?
So
listen, Russ, I'm going to let you talk. Hey, brother, I don't have to interrupt. I like this. I love this. This is great. I love it. I'm usually having to ask questions. So no, keep it up. Keep it up.
So the 2 pitfalls that business owners fall into, and I'll share with you the statistics on that, is the first pitfall that every business owner, and again, I've been doing this for over 25 years, that 25-year mark, anything under that, it was comfortable for me to say, but saying over 25 years is extremely painful. Especially when my daughter last year for my birthday card wrote in it, "You're 1 year shy of being a half a century old." Mm. So that made me feel really old. So in that, over 25 years coaching over 16,000 business owners, I find that every business owner falls into potentially two pits. The first pit is they wake up and they say, oh my, I have no customers. So every business starts off with a degree of what I call friends, family, and early adopters. So they have that, but very few businesses develop a pipeline beyond those friends, family, and early adopters. Some people, their friends and family and early adopters last several years. Some, they don't have many, as I put it, they don't have many friends, family, so they last only a couple months. But every business falls into that pit where they haven't nurtured along beyond creating a pipeline beyond those friends, family, and early adopters. So out of 10 businesses that start, roughly 1 out of 10 actually builds a pipeline beyond those friends, family, and early adopters, because business owners get busy servicing customers and they focus on that, and then they say, okay, I have enough customers, I need to service them. And then they wake up and they say, oh no, I don't have anybody else. And then they start marketing, and a lot of businesses run out of cash because there's a lag in marketing. I tell people that when you need to market is when you're busiest. And that's counterintuitive to most business owners. They think, well, I have a lot of customers, I need to service them, I'll get to marketing later. And when you're the busiest, you got to market the most because there's a lag. You have some hot leads that you're moving to close. You have some warm that you got to go nurture along from warm to hot. And then you got to have a pipeline of cold that you're moving from cold to warm to hot. So a lot of business owners don't do that. I encourage business owners to develop a pipeline 9 times your revenue goal. So if your revenue goal is 100,000, then you should have a pipeline of $900,000 and be nurturing the cold to warm, the warm to hot, and nurturing the hot to close. And if you wait and you're only focusing on the hot and you don't have any cold and warm in your pipeline, you could be too late. So in sales, long time ago, I learned this concept of having 10 sources of leads, 10 places that you're going to be getting your leads from. Now, 80% of them come from 2. But why should you nurture the other 8? Because the 2 that you're using are going to dry up. So you need to be having a pipeline of those other 8 that you're nurturing along, because the 2 that you have, that you use them up, you can't wait until you're done in order to. So out of 10 businesses that start, only 1 climbs out and has that pipeline of 9 times. So you take 10 businesses that climb out of the first pit and they fall into the second pit. Mm-hmm. And the second pit, you wake up and you say, oh my, I have too many customers. So why is having too many customers a bad thing?
Cash flow.
Why is having too many customers a bad thing?
Cash flow.
You have your whole business on your fingertips, mm-hmm. and one little thing goes wrong and the whole thing implodes. So out of 10 businesses that make it out of the first pit, mm-hmm. fall into the second pit, only 1 climbs out. So, climbing out is having the systems developed. Where a lot of businesses fail is that they get to that point and they start needing to hire, and the whole how things are done is in their head, and they don't have the time to sit down and write out the system. So I break a business apart into 27 core processes. And I first start breaking a business down into 3 core areas, and then each of those 3 into 3, and then each of those into 3 to get 9 in the core 3 areas. So you add that up, 9 times 3 is 27. So I break the business down in 27 and creating the systems. So only 1 out of 10 actually do that.
1 out of 10 businesses.
So statistically speaking, out of 100 businesses that start, only 1 creates a real business. And again, a real business is a profitable business that works without the owner, that you can ultimately sell it. So what I do is to help people be in that 1%.
Taking notes, by the way. I'm not doodling over here. Okay, just FYI, I'm taking notes. I like,
So again, there's a lot of businesses that are self-employed, and the IRS, if you look at statistics of, how many people stay in business, it's roughly about, 50%. But the IRS is if people are still paying taxes, they count that as being a business. There's a difference between having a business, meaning being self-employed, and having a real business. And that translates, I know a lot of your listeners are government contracting, and the government contracting officer or a small business liaison officer with a large business of people, whether prime and people looking at subcontracting opportunities, they know these statistics. They know that 99% of businesses aren't real. So that's a huge threat to the contracting officer. So the last thing they want to do is give a contract to someone who's going to fail in the middle of the contract. So the contracting officer is wanting to make sure that you're in that 1%, that you're not going to fail on them in the middle. So that's, if you're self-employed and the whole business is around you, that's a huge threat to a contracting officer. Because if something happens to you, the business owner, the whole business is going to implode. If you don't have a pipeline beyond their contract, you're going to run out of cash. So they want to make sure that you are in that 1%. This is my opinion. This is in no way, shape, or form the view of the SBDC or anybody else. This is my personal view that I'm sharing right now. Personally, I believe the best way to document to a contracting officer that you're in that 1% is by having your line of credit and your bonding capacity, if it applies, on your capability statement.
Sure.
Because what you're doing is the underwriter for a bank or for a bonding company, they're looking at the same thing. They're looking at, is the business profitable and sustainable? They wouldn't give a line of credit to a business that's not real, of any size, and they wouldn't do a bonding if it's not real. So having the line of credit And the bonding capacity on your capability statement demonstrates that you're in that 1% to the contracting officer. A lot of businesses, they'll have the bonding on it, but not their line of credit. So whatever your line of credit is now, I suggest in contracting to increase it. Keep increasing, having the discipline of not using it, but having it to document that you're in that 1% is a great way, in my opinion, to show that that you have the cash flow and you have the systems in place, that you're not going to run out of cash or implode in the middle of the contract.
Can we backtrack a little bit? You said you've been doing this for 25 plus years. Where did you start? Like, how did you start and get involved in this? Will you share a little bit about your story, your background?
It's interesting how I fell into it. I actually, from the earliest remembrance I have, was I wanted to go into law enforcement.
Okay.
And so I went to college, and the two things that federal law enforcement were looking for is somebody with an accounting background and a legal background. So
law enforcement?
Yeah. Like the FBI, US Marshals, they wanted an accounting background.
Okay.
And they were looking for a legal background. So I majored in accounting and pre-law political science. Through my college experience after the fourth knee injury, I realized that, and a doctor and a physical therapist documented that my knees are so bad, combined with my flat feet and a bad back, that I would never get into a police academy. And that was, I went through MEPS, which is the Military Engine Processing Station. Mm-hmm. And the medical doctor looked at my bad knees, my flat feet, and my bad back, and he said, quote, "In the worst of war, we would never, ever draft you."
Wow. That's not
so
nice.
You couldn't get drafted. That means
so.
I had a political science background, an accounting background. I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer. So something I looked into was economic development, which kind of looks at both of those, and that economic development I worked for a congressman, and one of the legislative issues that he co-sponsored was the creation of AmeriCorps. So I was inspired by that. That was one of the legislative issues that I handled. And then when AmeriCorps was created, I was in the first class, the first campus of AmeriCorps. And that just led me to further be involved. And then I managed a chamber and just went into the consulting training world. And I've been there ever since. So I don't have that amazing entrepreneurial story, taking a business from nothing to an IPO. I don't have that amazing story. But what I do have is 16,000 stories of what works and what doesn't work to help the business owner get from where they are now to where they want to be. So I have those people that I've helped and worked with that have that amazing story, and I bring them in. So I'm more the facilitator of the process than having my own entrepreneurial story. So rather than coming in a room with one great story, I can come into a room with 16,000 stories of what to do and what not to do.
And I know in itself has tremendous value, because a lot of times what I've found is that sometimes the entrepreneurial stories, the ones that are great stories, there were people in the background that helped contribute a lot. And so the entrepreneur can't always tell you all of the chutzpah that took them to there. So I found that even some of the entrepreneurs, they stumble in trying to even tell their own story because there were some great people behind that helped to accelerate it. And I found that amongst many of my podcast guests. They said, well, I heard this one person and she was incredible and she took the business and she ran with it and she had been working in the government and she had all the leads and the contacts. So it's really hard to replicate if you're trying to teach another small business. So I do appreciate having 16,000 stories to share. Is there, can we start off, because people love stories. Is there a story? And again, it could be a failure story. It could be a success story. Is there a story that, because people do like stories, it helps connect the listeners to someone that's real. Do you have a story that you can share, positive and or negative? And again, we're not concerned about names and locations, but just a story that for me, I share my story of how I got back into the government world. I won't repeat it today just because my listeners know the story, but I had I started off doing government contracts and then I went to the private sector, and then I ended up coming back to government contracts. So, and I tell that story oftentimes on my podcast. So do you have any stories of maybe a small business?
Tons of stories, and I'll get the common stories of what makes people, the difference between those that are in the 1% and those that fall into the 99% arena. And one of the key things, and again, this is from my observation of working with a lot of business owners, and I'm going to take people to the second book that I recommend is the book Think and Grow Rich. So in Think and Grow Rich, prior to the publishing of that book in 1937, how to create and maintain wealth was shared from one family member to another verbally. So that's why in world history, most wealth stayed within a few families. And one exception to that was Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie grew up poor and became extremely wealthy in the steel industry. And he wanted to share with the world how to become wealthy. So what he commissioned a gentleman named Napoleon Hill to research the 500 wealthiest people of the day. And every book, business-related, self-help book, motivational book, etc., that's been written since 1937, in my opinion, is based off of that research. Some authors say so, others don't. But one of the things that Napoleon Hill found in researching the 500 wealthiest people is that wealthy people have a written, as he puts it, a statement of desire. How much money they want by when, and most importantly, why. Why they want that wealth. What are they going to do with it? Because wealth is a means to an end. So what I found from my experience, that 80% of the time when I'm looking at a business, so roughly 80% of the time, when I see a business not launching successfully or growing successfully, 80% of the time is because they don't have that written statement of desire. They don't know why they're working so hard. Mm-hmm. And Napoleon Hill documented, he didn't know why this works, but the game changer for people were, not only did they have this in writing of how much money they wanted by when and why, the first leg of the journey, as he puts it, is to believe in it. If you can't see yourself with that money on that date, I guarantee you it'll never happen. So the first step is to believe in it. And he also documented that what wealthy people do is that they read that statement of desire, again, how much money they want by when and why, twice per day. When they wake up in the morning, so their whole day, the activities are driven on that. The second is before they go to bed. And in 1937, it was believed that it was thought that when you slept, your brain slept too. And it was in the 50s that they realized that your brain is actually working harder when your body's asleep than when you are awake. So your brain is actually working on your day while you're sleeping. It's processing things. So the last thing you look at before you go to bed, your brain is going to be processing more than anything else. So that's why wealthy people read that statement of desire twice per day. So becoming wealthy, building that business, being in the 1% is really simple. There's only 3 things that a business owner needs to do. It's just really, really hard work. So the 3 things that people need to do, one is follow those spending money.
Follow what?
Follow those spending money.
Okay, right. Okay.
What a lot of business owners do is they're following people that are not spending money and wondering why they're not making money. The second thing is to solve their known problem better, faster, cheaper than anybody else. And the third is to communicate to them their way, not yours.
Oof, that's huge.
So number 1, again, is following those spending money. The key word there is spending. Not who has money, but who's spending money. Because who spent money yesterday is not necessarily who's spending money today, and not necessarily who's spending money tomorrow. So in a government contracting space, it's what governments are spending, what agencies specifically are spending money.
Right. Right.
The second is to solve known problem, better, faster, cheaper. The key word there is known problem. A lot of people, in a quote that I use is, you could have the cure for cancer, but if the person doesn't know they have cancer, you can't solve it. So the key word there is, what is the known problem?
Right.
The third is to communicate to them their way. Key word there is their. Communicate it, and the there is the one who's spending money. How do they want to be communicated? Those 3 things are real simple. It's just really, really, really hard work. And what I found is that most people do not want to do the hard work, and you're not going to do the hard work unless you have a compelling, as Napoleon Hill puts it, white heat of desire of why you want to make money. So 80% of the time, they don't have that compelling. As another business owner, that a serial entrepreneur that I work with calls it a fire in the belly. If you don't have that fire in the belly, that burning white heat, you're not going to do the hard work, because it's really hard work. It's simple to make money. Just do those 3 things. but it's really hard work. And looking at government contracting, when it comes to following those spending money, there are 3 different decision makers that you need to follow in government contracting. Those 3 people have different known problems, and those 3 people need to be communicated differently. So in government contracting, there's the user, there's the contracting officer, and then the small business office. It's the emergence of those 3 relationships are key. So all 3 of them have different problems. The user wants to make sure that it works. The contracting officer, the analogy that I use, and I know nobody has this anymore, but they have a stack of paper on the left side of their desk, and they want to move the stack of paper to the other side, and they want to make sure that the small business is not going to cause a problem of moving the stack of paper from one side to the other. So they want to make sure that you're not going to fail in the middle.
Right.
And then the small business office, what is their problem? Who is the small business office's customer? A lot of people think that the small business owner is their customer. It's not. The small business office's customer is the contracting officer, that agency's goals. And they want to make sure that the agency meets their goals. So a lot of small business owners believe that the small business office is there to serve them, and they're not. They're there to serve the contracting officer, the agency's goals. So the small business office doesn't call you back. You send an email, they don't respond. And you think, well, they're supposed to call me back. That's the job of the small business office. No, if I don't call somebody back, the Small Business Development Center, the small business owner, is our client.
Right. So
but the small business office, their customer is not the small business. Their customer is the contract officer. So, the analogy that I use with this is, so let's say that you go home and there's a voicemail that you listen to from a company that does roof repair, and they leave a voicemail message for you about fixing your leaking roof. And right now your roof is not leaking. Do you pick up the phone, call back that roofing contractor, thank them for calling you, and say, my roof is not leaking right now, but thank you for calling me? Did you do that?
I would not do that. No.
No, no one really does that. Okay?
I would not do that.
If that roofing contractor, they left the voicemail, they sent you something in the mail, they emailed you, they built a relationship with you, and your roof started leaking, what would you do?
All right. I would know who to call.
Remember that roofing contractor and call them. That's what small businesses need to do, is build a relationship with the small business office. Communicate, and there's a formula that I use, is 4-3-9.
Okay.
The 9 is the number of exposures or communications that a business owner needs, or anybody needs to make for somebody to make a decision. It takes an average of 9 communications or 9 exposures for somebody to make a decision. Experts say if you communicate with them 9 times over a year, they missed the message. It's too far apart. Okay. If you communicate with somebody 9 times in a week, what's that called?
Oh, that's your harassment.
harassment,
Yeah,
stalking, something like
exactly.
that. Okay.
Spam. Yeah.
So that's where the 3 months is key. So communicating 9 times over 3 months, and the first number, 4, is the number of different communication vehicles. Don't do all email, don't do all voicemail. As I say in marketing, different strokes for different folks. So you use 4 different communication vehicles over 3 months to communicate 9 times. Now, if this is a cold lead, moving the cold to warm is a decision. So I'd use applying the 4-3-9 to move from cold to warm. So moving someone, if it's warm, moving them from warm to hot is a decision. So using the 4-3-9 for that. And then from hot to close, using the 4-3-9. So if it's a cold lead, moving them through the process could be a 9-month process during 27 communications.
Okay, so cold to warm, that's one cycle.
That's one decision. Remember, the 4-3-9
Yep.
is for somebody to make a decision about you.
Okay, so we'll do that for decision. Okay. All right, so cold to warm is one cycle.
4-3-9, so moving them from cold to warm is a decision.
One
From
decision.
warm to
Right.
hot is a decision. From hot to close is a decision.
Okay, and then hot to close.
So that could be a 9-month process during 27 different communications over the 9 months. So 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 3 is 27.
Okay. Now, where did you come up with this?
The 4-3-9,
Yes.
that's a
Tried and true.
that's a general marketing view of being assertive. So a lot of business owners are too passive.
Mhm.
You know, they send an email and then wonder why nobody responds.
Right.
Right. So, but it's also not being aggressive. So you want to be assertive. So the 4-3-9, yeah, you know, you talk to a business owner, and I mean, it's a 9-month process, and it's 27 communications to move somebody through the cycle. I just want them to buy from me now. And one of the mistakes that business owners make is they try to close a deal before it's open. So if somebody doesn't know about you and they haven't identified that they have a problem, and meaning they're cold, to say buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, they're not thinking that.
Right.
So you cannot close a deal until it's open. So moving people from that cold to the warm to hot, and then the hot to close. So when they're a hot lead, that means that you're ready to say buy from me, buy from me, buy from me. So you can't open until you close. And you know, 27 communications over 9 months, that's hard work. And unless you have a compelling reason, that burning white heat of desire, that fire in the belly, you're not going to do it.
Right.
That's what puts people into that 1%. Wanting to do that hard work.
Right.
That's what puts people into that 1%. Wanting to do that hard work.